Ooh, I like this car. Heavy, nice top speed. Bad acceleration though. How's it compared to this one? Better handling? Hello YouTube. Today we are talking backdrops, but not the material, we're talking the stand. How do you hold up the thing that you are going to put your actual backdrop on? So just like Mario Kart, there are pros and cons to every option, and so we are going to break this down for you. I have 5 different backdrop setups, and we're going to rank these and find out the best backdrop for you. So the same way that Mario Kart rates its karts with top speed and handling and acceleration, I have a 7-point system that I'm going to rank all of the stands that you see here today. That is going to be cost, setup, portability, footprint, stability, versatility, and general ease of use. Cost is an obvious one. Setup, I am ranking both ease of setup and how much time it takes. Portability is going to combine how easy it is to transport to a set location or how easy it is to store if you're using it in a home studio space. Footprint is literally how much space it takes up. This can be a big one. I know I'm in a really big studio now, but that has not always been the case. I used to shoot in my very small basement that I think was only 8 feet wide with low ceilings, and footprint has been a huge issue my entire career. Next is stability. Stability is absolutely paramount. You don't want something falling onto your models or your set or over onto a light and breaking some gear. All of that is bad. So the first note is always use a sandbag. Sandbags can turn something low stability into very high stability. That said, sandbags are going to add to the cost, and some of them are easier to bag than others. This one on the end is one single C-stand, very easy to add a C-stand to. This one, much harder. You have 3 different points and none of them can really hold any weight. And finally, we have versatility. How many things could you use this for in how many different situations? And then a final ranking for general ease of use. So with that out of the way, let's walk down the line and show you these 5 different setups. Here we have Old Faithful, the go-to gold standard for all photography backdrops. So this is just 2 C-stands and a crossbar. You can do 2 C-stands and a boom pole. You can do 2 C-stands and a super clamp with a hook. This is just kind of the easiest go-to that there is. As for cost, for this kind of setup, I'm going to assume that you're actually getting nice C-stands, so this is going to cost you upwards of about $300. As for setup time, it only took me 60 seconds to get this whole thing set up. As for portability, they are alright, but that is where it suffers a little bit. Getting a rack or a bag that actually holds a bunch of C-stands is really expensive and very cumbersome to carry. Whew. Here's mine. Hi! Are you gonna help with our video today? Yes. These are just really heavy and kind of cumbersome to transport. If you buy a turtle base, which is the bottom comes off, then it comes in 2 parts, it makes it a little bit easier. If you want more info on that, I actually did a full breakdown on a whole range of different brand C-stands. You can see in the iCard or down in the description. So where heaviness makes it suffer portability, it helps a lot with stability. No sandbags, these things are rock solid. It is going to take a lot of force and effort to knock these over. So when it comes to stability for any of these, it comes down to pure physics. What is the size and what is the weight? And that basically gives it a center of gravity. When you push on it and the center of gravity falls outside of the size of the base, that's when it falls over. So there's your quick physics lesson of the day. Because these are so heavy and have a relatively large base, they are rock solid. That said, because they are so heavy, the base can actually be a lot smaller than some of the lighter ones that are easier to knock over. Let's talk footprint. A single C-stand takes up about 26 by 26 inches. So 2 C-stands, what you need is 26 inches of depth for your backdrop, and you need the size of your paper, which can be anything from skinny here to extending out as far as this beam will let me. So whatever the size of your backdrop is, plus 26 inches, it'll be 13 on either side. So I love C-stands. This is a great way to set up your backdrop. When it comes to versatility, when you don't need a backdrop anymore, you have C-stands. These are great. So definitely 5 out of 5 for versatility. And just general use, 5 out of 5. Again, this is just your go-to photographer backdrop setup. So kind of pricey, but highly recommended. Next up, we have generic backdrop stands. I can't even tell you what brand these are because I bought them so long ago. These predate all of my C-stands. You can get one nowadays for about $50 to $100 on Amazon, and yeah, price can't really be beat here. That said, setup, it did take me a little bit longer to set these up, even though they're very similar to the C-stands. This one took me about 90 seconds because it's a little more finicky. The other thing that happened is this barrel is not as strong as a C-stand barrel, so it was impacted on traveling one time. So this gets stuck when it tries to telescope, which just kind of makes it that much harder to set up. When it comes to portability, these have generally the same portability as a C-stand. They have pretty much the same form factor, but they are a lot lighter. When it comes to footprint, the base of these guys is a lot wider than your C-stand base. So a single stand is about 36 inches all the way across, which means that to set this up, you need a solid 3 feet or 36 inches of depth, as well as 3 feet of width, in addition to the width of your backdrop. As for stability, these are rated very low. Just because it has a really big base, these are so light and flimsy, any toddler or drunk adult at a photo booth can very easily knock this over. Do not use without sandbags. I'm totally serious. The other thing is you need to add a lot of sandbags to these feet because the sandbag doesn't like going in the middle, it wants to sit on top, but because it's not flat like a C-stand, it has a tendency to slide off. So you do need to bag these a lot. They are a tripping hazard, they are a little cumbersome to use. Stability, not great. Versatility, not great. I would never use these stands to hold anything important, expensive, electronic, or heavy. These are my backdrop stands only. They come into use every once in a while when I need this kind of backdrop, like I said, for a photo booth, but generally that is their sole purpose. When it comes to general ease of use, I mean, they're stands. You could use them as light stands. They're pretty easy to use, but the telescoping pole impact, making it feel stuck and harder to, put away and pull out, just makes it that much harder, so it's gonna lose a little bit of points for that. Next up, we have Autopoles. So I did a full video about Autopoles. You can see them, link in the description or up here in the iCard. They are very easy to set up. That's it. But the caveat here is it kind of depends what you're going to put on them. So once you get these guys set up, if you want to just put a super clamp with a hook on it like this, there we go, and a cross beam in the middle, you have a standard pole and beam setup just like you would have with the previous two setups we just looked at. But if you want to use the rollers, like behind me, then it can get just a slightly more complicated. It's a little cumbersome to put up with just one person, especially if you have a 10-foot backdrop like I do. Much easier, the shorter lengths, so obviously less weight, or 5, 6, 7 feet rolls are going to be a lot easier than 9, 10-foot rolls to put up. So when it comes to cost, I did a full breakdown on the differences of the different Autopoles in the Autopole video. Definitely check that out in the description. Setup, very easy. Portability, not very. These are incredibly easy to store in the studio, so I have to give them props for that. When you're not using them, they take up as much space as a single light stand. But because they don't telescope down as far as a normal C-stand or light stand would, it does make it a little bit trickier to put into your car, especially if you drive a tiny frickin' little car like I do. So let's talk about where these really shine, the footprint. With all of the other backdrop methods we've talked about so far, you need multiple feet to be able to set up a backdrop. You can set this up with 3 inches of clearance between your back wall and your shooting space. If you do decide to use the rollers here, then you're actually looking at 10 inches of clearance, or 12 inches side to side, 6 inches per roller. As for stability, these cannot be beat. I could pull on these all day or bump into them, as a matter of fact, and they are not coming down. That is just kind of the beauty of an Autopole. So stability is 5 out of 5, cannot be beat. If I thought, C-stands with sandbags were good, these are better. That said, versatility, these really fall short because you need to have a ceiling or something that you can tension it between. So with all the other backdrop methods, you can go as short as your stand or as tall as your stand. There is a minimum clearance height of roughly 4 feet to a max clearance height of 12, 15, 20 feet, whatever size your stand is. Autopoles, on the other hand, you can buy extensions, but you need to have a ceiling that is in between 7 to 12 feet to really be able to use these to their potential, or something that you can clamp, whether it's, a ledge to a garage door. I've seen that in studios as well. So there is a lack of versatility there. I definitely would not bring these on set unless you knew that your client set was pre-scouted and you had a spot for this, and this was going to help you with some other issue, like they have tall ceilings but no footprint to set up another stand. There's a consideration for that. But otherwise, these are kind of studio-only installs. Now, when it comes to general ease of use, these are super easy to use. There you go, and I can reposition it anywhere I want to. But again, all of the things I just talked about of you need to have a place to clamp it, and this is not as easy to fit into a standard sedan as a normal light stand would. Next up is the, oh God, do we have to talk about this?
Yes.
Fine. Next up is the X-Drop by Westcott, but now would be a good time for a message from our sponsor, me. Thanks, me. Sometimes, when independent video creators make a product review, they're not being a corporate shill and completely ignoring a product's flaws. Sometimes, they're not out to get you personally. And sometimes, just sometimes, they're actually trying to be helpful by giving you an honest look at both the capabilities and pitfalls of a product before you buy it. So, when you're commenting on those videos, remember, be kind, or shut the f*** up. This message brought to you by the Online Council of Don't Be a Complete Douche Nozzle. Back to you, me. Thanks, me. So I already did an in-depth review on the Westcott X-Drop, and no, my opinions have not changed. Link in the iCard or down in the description. But let's give it its fair shake today in this ranking. So when it comes to cost, one of these is going to set you back about $120. This part, the frame part, is not really expensive, but it comes with the fabric. The fabric, on the other hand, is expensive, and because it is proprietary, to continue using this, you can't use a seamless or paper or a pop-up. You have to use the Westcott X-Drop fabric. So I will say this is a nice quality fabric that doesn't fade in the sun and gives you, a good backdrop. But the fact that it's proprietary and this is the expensive part means that the cost is kind of a fake low cost because you're going to end up spending more the more backdrops you buy. So initially, this part is cheap, but you are kind of buying into a system, and you're not doing that with anything else here. So let's talk about setup. This thing took me a whopping 90 seconds to set up today. I know. So props for it there. When it comes to portability, this thing shines. I mean, that is what it was made for. The whole thing fits in this bag. It is crazy light. I mean, yeah, the bag's empty now, but there's pretty much no difference with its full. Here's me holding it with 2 fingers. I know, strongest man in the world. No, this thing is really great for on-location headshots in big offices. There's the very specific niche for you. Because let's talk about its downfall, footprint. Now, one of the reasons why I don't like this because of the footprint. I focus very heavily on footprint because, let me reiterate, this is the biggest space I've ever seen. This feels like a huge, large, luxurious mansion compared to everything that I've done the past 10 years in my career. I have worked with small, tight, cramped spaces where you have to Tetris and min-max and get everything as small as possible, otherwise it will not work. So when we're talking 3 feet for one of the other ones, this is a whopping 60 inches of depth, a full 5 feet that you need between the wall and your backdrop. 5 feet of not usable space. Now, when I tried pointing this out in my previous video, a lot of you mother ingrates like to really intentionally miss the point here. So let me break it down for you. At 60 inches, I give it a 3 out of 5 for stability. It's actually surprising. But when you bring it in, because I don't have 5 feet of dead space to spare, let's just, for kicks and giggles, see what happens. So it goes to an absolute 1 for stability. Stuart, when we are podcasting, he uses an X-Drop behind him in the frame. And if he so much as leans his chair back and grazes it, it falls over. Here's another thing about footprint. The footprint is not variable. As I was saying, the footprint is not variable. So all of the other stands, I have been measuring the footprint by how deep they are, how wide they are, plus the size of your backdrop. Because you could put a 5-foot seamless roll on it, you could put a 10-foot seamless roll on it. It is going to be the size of your backdrop plus. This, however, is not plus. It is what it is. Let me get the exact dimensions for you. So this is 66 inches by 90 inches, or 5.5 feet by 7.5 feet. So I've found that 5.5 feet wide is not wide enough to shoot full body portraits. It's great if you're shooting fashion or a model or someone that is very tall and skinny. But let's say you're shooting cosplay. Well, all of a sudden, someone takes a power pose and they're not fitting on your backdrop anymore. And the more separation you give them, the worse that becomes. So this not being wide enough is an issue for me. The other issue, besides the depth thing, is height. In my office, when I first started podcasting at the new house, I used this as a backdrop. I was still cleaning and didn't want you to see the mess. But it is an attic bedroom with very low ceilings. Because I could not tension this to its full extent, I had this very sad, droopy backdrop. So this backdrop works when you have a full 5 feet wide. You're not shooting anything wider than 5 feet. You have a full 5-foot depth, and you have a minimum distance to be able to put this up at full extension. In Stuart's office, he is using this currently for podcasting. He is actually touching his ceiling with the X-Drop. So if you have all of the very specific requirements that this high maintenance piece of gear needs, then yeah, it's actually a great piece of gear. But you can see my frustrations with it. So I do like this for its purpose. It works excellently at doing vertical shots when you have a large space on location. Where it fails is, should you need to put this outside, all of a sudden you need more sandbags than you would need with a C-stand. If you don't have the full 5-foot space, then you need to figure out a way to anchor it down. If your ceilings are too short, you see where this is going. One thing that is nice, I will say, is they sell a version of this that is 12 feet long so you can get a full sweep. That is amazing for getting a full seamless sweep for how portable this is for the price. I will absolutely give Westcott props on that one, but again, 5 feet is just not wide enough for most uses. Get this out of there. Next up. Our final contender is a pop-up center-mounted to a C-stand. So cost-wise, this is only one C-stand, which you would think would make it cheaper, but these little pieces are deceptively expensive. You're actually looking at $50 to $100 per piece there, and there are 2 different pieces holding this clamp up. There is this clamp, and then there is the super clamp with the knuckle there. And then, of course, you have to get an actual pop-up, which I'm not including in the price because I'm not counting materials in this specific video. So this one is a little bit more specific, but for the cost, it's not bad. When it comes to setup, this did take me a full 2 minutes. Pop-ups can be a little bit finicky, especially when you get one as large as I have here. This is a 5x7 one from Impact. As for portability, this is amazing. Pop-ups were built to be portable. Footprint. Now, the reason why I actually love this so much with a passion is because its footprint is nearly non-existent. So you have one C-stand, which means you have 26 inches of space that you need front to back. But there is absolutely no space needed on the side for legs. Your width is literally the width of your pop-up here. And I have this mounted vertically, but if you wanted this mounted horizontally, you absolutely could. Just undo the clamp, switch it horizontal, and now you have the same depth. So this is just incredibly versatile. The reason why this is so important is this is actually the setup that I use when I do a photo booth at Comic-Con. When I buy a booth, I have a 10-foot square, and I cannot go outside that square. No feet, no stands, nothing. And so being able to compact everything down like this was kind of a feat of ingenuity for me, done out of necessity because I had very strict limitations that none of the other backdrops we looked at today could possibly compete with. Now, you're probably not in that scenario like I am, but that is where this one is king. As for stability, this thing is great, super stable. It loses a little bit because it is so tall and those clamps are heavy, but again, add some sandbags to this and you have absolutely no problem. At con, I have this about a full extension, which I think is 12-15 feet high on this stand. I even put a TV up there, and I have 40 pounds of sandbags, just to give you reference. So as for versatility, this one is, again, just a bunch of photography parts. When you're not using this, the pop-up can be used on any of the other backdrop options. Your clamps can be used to hold up any other manner of gear. And you know what? Bjorn approves too. General ease of use, folding up a pop-up can be a pain in the ass, but everything else about this is great and super easy. So again, it's just photography gear, and because you only have one stand to adjust, you're not constantly having to go, oh, is it level? Can you help me out? Can you get that one over there? So, you know, just top ranks for versatility on this one. Here's the final spec sheet for you. I'll show you all of these one by one. Feel free to pause and screenshot this if you need it for later. Editor's note, I realize that this video is pretty nitpicky. All the costs are approximate and will vary widely based on where you live, what brands you get, what sale happens to be that day, if a butterfly created a wind in Nebraska, that type of thing. So kind of bear with me there. Along with setup time, nothing takes longer to set up than like 3 minutes. So again, all of this is kind of nitpicky. If you drive a van, maybe portability is not even an issue for you. But these are all things that do need to be considered for photographers of all kinds. There are going to be some of these categories that are very important to you, but not important to someone else. But that is why I wanted to include them all. So thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, be sure to like it. I mean, that's how this whole YouTube thing works. Subscribe, let me know what kind of videos you want to see in the future. Thank you so much for watching my gear reviews. You can also find me on Patreon. There's a link down in the description. Just even $1 helps out a lot so I can keep the lights on and keep bringing you content. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time. See what I mean about that whole lights on thing?